Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the series on the truck. Today, gonna get this steering column fitted up to the cab, try and get the linkage hooked up to the transmission, and possibly get the transmission cooler lines hooked up, and maybe that line to the power steering pump. Gonna have to clean it up a little bit. I don't have any degreaser at the moment, so I might have to go take a break and get some of that, but we'll see. So that's what we're gonna be planning on doing. So sit back, enjoy, and come along to C with Z. Okay, so here's the steering column. I was successful in getting everything swapped over. This is the column that was in the truck already. I'd done some work to it previously, so I didn't want to just use the new one. But you can see now it's got the shift lever. There's actually a tube that runs all the way up inside this tube that connects to the lever. So now we've got a shift lever on here. This switch is a different switch. This is the one from the new column that I got. The switch that I had on here actually had cruise control controls on it, and I didn't want to have cruise control on my truck. So I used the turn signal lever from the one that I just got, because it just has the windshield wipers and the turn signals in the low and bright. Got everything installed back in though, just got to put the steering wheel on it. This here is the high-low switch. This here is the ignition switch. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get her mated up to the truck again. This will be the third time I've put this thing in here. Goes right down through that hole there. Have to work our way around all this wiring, and then there's a bunch of this wiring that hooks into that column. So we're going to go ahead and get going on that. I'll set up the camera here and you can watch me work. Hope you enjoy. Also, before we get started, I just wanted to say I did have some footage of tearing down those columns and putting them back together, but I didn't really think about it, and I had my radio going the whole time, and it had a bunch of copyrighted music on it, and the footage was just essentially worthless without me being able to tell you what was going on. Otherwise it would just be a bunch of pictures of stuff without any type of context. So I had to scrap all that. I'm still fairly new at this and kind of learning and making sure that I have those things taken care of. So sorry you don't get to see the actual tear down and rebuilds of the columns. It was not too difficult, but not exactly easy at the same point. But in the end, everything worked out. Everything is good and as it should be, and now we're ready to put them in. All right. So I'm just going to start here. Grabbing the two supports. There's two supports that hold this up to the subframe under behind the dash. Get this all threaded in there. Try to avoid all the wiring. Feed that lever through. Okay. just go ahead and get these 2 bolts on here just to kind of support it. And then I gotta go under the hood and get that lined up with the rag joint. Well, looks like I have got this pinned against this lower steering shaft, so I'm going to have to actually pull that back out. I think what I'll do is I'll get a bungee cord so I can kind of support that column without having those bolts in. All right, now I can pull these off, drop this down, there we go. Right, come back out here and hook that rag joint up. So basically right now I've got to connect the upper steering shaft to the lower steering shaft, and that's done under the hood right here. Okay, and I've got that together. Oh, I'm gonna have to go turn the key on. Free up this steering column so I can turn this a little bit. There we go. And there's just 4 bolts that hold this rag joint together. So I'm going to get those set in place. All right, so see right here, there's the bottom of the shaft coming out, and this is the what they call a rag joint. It's essentially these pieces of rubber, and they connect the lower shaft to the upper shaft, and what that does is it is basically shock absorber. So any shock from your steering from your wheels doesn't transfer directly into your wheel. It goes, that joint helps to kind of absorb the shock, so your wheel's not jostling around all the time. Now we can go ahead and get this set back up into place. If I don't fumble my pieces here. Alright. I am missing a nut. I think it might have fallen down into the nether. There we go. Alright, so that's where it mounts up in there. Those bolts hanging down, there's two of them, one on either side. It's just like a strap that runs underneath it. So now essentially it's in place. So now I'll go ahead and tighten down those joints. Alright, so on this side, you can see right there coming through the firewall, there's 3 bolts that are on basically the cover that covers up that. And so now I've got to take, there's a washer and a nut that goes on each of those bolts to secure the steering column to the firewall. Okay, we have that done. Next will be the hinge. So basically what we have is one single rod, and it goes from that right there, you can see there's a little bushing, and then that lever, it puts in there. And if you look down there, there's that rod, and it has 2 pieces coming up off of it. The piece there on the right has a bushing in it similar to that, and the rod basically runs from that down to that one there. That's what allows you to shift the transmission. Let's get that hooked up. Alright, we got our linkage on. Unfortunately, in doing so, I discovered an issue. I do not have a parking pawl that is engaging, and what that is that is what holds your truck from moving when you put it in park. And right now it's in park, and as you can see, it is just rolling freely. So another problem I've got to try to figure out, unfortunately. All right, well, I guess I'll give you guys a little chuckle. I started pouring over everything because, you know, I'm pretty meticulous, and I've never rebuilt a transmission before, and an automatic transmission can be considered fairly complicated. But I felt like I did a really good job and made sure I was extremely meticulous about the tear down, rebuild, keeping track of everything, going through the steps. And so I was really confused by this, and I finally realized what the problem was. I did not have my axle shafts in. So there's an axle shaft. It goes into the axle tube on both sides. It's held into these bolts on the hub, and those were both out, and so they were not engaging the wheels to the rear differential, and so basically the wheels were just free spinning. And even though the differential was locked, it wasn't locking the truck in place because the axle shafts were not installed. So I went ahead and took a second and put those in, and what do you know, voila, it worked. And the sad part is, along the way, I did a pretty good number on my thumb. Got a really, really good blood blister there. It hurts like heck. So yeah, there you go. I'm not too big of a man to admit when I've pulled a boner. So I hope y'all enjoy the chuckle. I sure got a chuckle out of it. All right, next we are going to install the transmission cooler lines. Basically these two ends hook into the transmission, run up front, and these two ends hook into the radiator. Now my radiator's installed, but I have another one out here to kind of show you where they hook in. So this is the bottom of the radiator here, and there's a one there and one right there, and those two lines hook onto that, and that warms the transmission fluid and also cools the transmission fluid. So these are pretty gunked up, as you can see. I just took them off an old truck, so they're a little rusty, a little oily, a little greasy. I'm gonna try and clean them up a little bit, and I'll get back with you. Alright, we got these pretty well cleaned up. They're not perfect, but they're pretty clean. I'm going to put them in, hook them up to the transmission, and see if these hoses are long enough to hopefully maybe cut the ends off of those and get those frayed ends cut off and have a new piece hooked on. But they're crimped hoses, so I gotta make sure I have enough before I go cutting it. Alright, so where they go, it's right under here on the transmission. There are two fittings. That's one of them right there. And one of them right there. And like I said, they run up front to the radiator. Down on the bottom of the radiator there. So I'm going to go ahead and get these routed through and hook them up. Okay, well, just seems like this thing's going to fight me tooth and nail the whole way. So unfortunately, this is the fitting that came off that transmission. This is the fitting that's on the lines that I just pulled off of another transmission, and as you can see, they are not the same size. So I have one of two choices. Either I can cut this new line and couple it with this old line right here, just like they've done here, which I'd rather not do, or I'm going to have to get new fittings that screw into the transmission that are the proper size for this flared fitting. So we will not be putting those lines on today. I'm going to give the gentleman a call that I picked these lines up from and see if he thinks that if I pull those fittings out, if they'll screw into mine, if they're the same size on the transmission side but bigger on the line side. So unfortunately, I think for today that is going to do it. It's getting late and I'm tired, and didn't get a whole lot done today. Just got that steering column installed, but it's one step closer. I did get these cooler lines cleaned up too, so that's nice. So yeah, I'm gonna give him a call and see what he thinks when I might be able to head back out there and pull those fittings. There was a couple other things that I wanted to get while I was out there. A piece for my dash, and it appears that I do not have the plug that goes out from the radio to the speakers, so I need to cut that plug off to run to my speakers as well. So there's a couple things to get. So yeah, I think that's going to do it. Not too long of a video, but I have a feeling a lot of the videos on this build are going to be shorter videos. I'm not really great at setting up the camera and taking video while I'm working. I don't really necessarily like doing that. I like showing the stuff, but trying to deal with filming while I'm doing the work is still a little foreign to me. I'm sure it'll get easier as I do it more, so I'm gonna force myself to do it, but we'll see how it goes. So anyways, I think that's gonna be a wrap for today. So if you like the videos, subscribe to the channel, like the video. If you want to get notifications of when new videos come out, you can hit the notifications bell. And until next time, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, tell your loved ones you love them. I'll see you on the next one.